Greetings and welcome to the 12th Annual World Congress Neurotalk of 2023. We're thrilled to present on negotiating identity and neurodiversity in the Metaverse, a study that discusses how we can utilize XR technologies and especially embodiment theory through avatars in order to build confidence in neurodivergent populations. Both I and Dr. Piper Hudson will be presenting our research here, and we look forward to sharing our findings. Now, thinking of the overall topics that will be covered, we should note that we're going to be looking at how this new digital landscape that's being fully integrated into our lives can be used and leveraged to support neurodiversity, identity development, and of course, capacity building in an inclusive workplace environment. So discussing the complexities of identity and neurodiversity in the metaverse will be our main theme. Now, why this is significant is because we have more flexible hybrid work arrangements that emerged even before COVID, but certainly accelerated by the global pandemic, which actually provided both challenges and opportunities for a variety of neurotypes, and especially neurodivergent populations. So what we have here is the potential to leverage a technology that came along right when the pandemic hit, making the barrier to entry and adoption much lower than it was. But we can leverage these technologies for an inclusive work environment. Therefore, in using the social model of disability, we can think differently about how work can be accomplished and how technology can be used, especially for those with sensory processing disorders. Now, the landscape of hybrid work shifted dramatically due to the pandemic, but continued even after the pandemic to radically transform what our daily work lives look like. Even now, I'm recording from my home office, taking my flex day from my regular research job in academia. So you can see that we are now, of course, reaching across space and time, even at this very conference, as I'm recording in the United States, and once again, this is being played in Japan. So in thinking about the abilities of us to communicate across these distances, it also affords the ability, once again, to reassign and reassess what and how work can be accomplished. So if we look at labor mediation through technology, this will only continue to accelerate due to the age of generative AI, and especially with Generation Alpha coming up. Now, how can we frame this for the discussion on neurodivergent populations? Well, what we know is of those that are diagnosed with a neurodivergent condition, that being either examples include on the spectrum of autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia, and more, we know that in this group, over 70% are going to report having severe anxiety and depressive disorders, usually relating to a lot of the sensory processing issues that they might encounter, but also just the stress of daily life given how they process the world. Now, if we compare that, 35% of general frontline workers report similar symptoms. So it's double in this way the experiences felt by quote unquote neurotypical workers on how much anxiety and depression they suffer. Now, employment is, of course, a major concern for this population because there is a high unemployment rate, despite the fact that most, when surveyed, especially those diagnosed with ASD or autism, wish to work. So therefore, the challenges that we're looking at are threefold. All right, of course, we have psychological challenges to overcome, but then also social cultural expectations and also economic challenges. This is a huge 15 to 20% of the global population, by some estimates, that is not contributing to the GDP, and that would be a major boost, especially during this time of worker shortages. Now, we can think about how to tap into this labor force and make work more accessible and inclusive through extended reality as a type of solution here. more and more solutions are becoming available. Of course, most people are familiar with Meta's Oculus 2, rebranded the Meta Quest 2 as the first commercially affordable and available option that lowered the barriers to entry across the board. It was, however, mostly marketed as a gaming device and not as necessarily something for the future of work. They did try to remedy that in the sense that we saw Meta Horizons coming up and Meta Workrooms, to where you can actually have an office space set up for a more standard and reflecting regular meeting space that we would have at work. Now, what XR affords us to do, though, if we look at the capabilities and capacities now with spatial computing, is we find that the support offered to neurodivergent populations in the workforce is somewhat limited. If you look at the needs that the population have, which include, of course, sensory considerations such as lighting, sound, texture, etc. There's only so much you're able to do, as well as introducing new and varied concepts and environments which are anxiety inducing. Therefore, what you can do with XR, though, is change all of that. You can lower the lighting, you can control, once again, your sensory input, you can control the level of sound, right? And you can be in any simulated environment that you wish that lowers the stressors that are going to inhibit the ability to work and certainly to be productive. So this also allows work, but also enhances both performance and social interaction, which is especially difficult for those that may have social anxiety disorder due to ASD. Now, what we can do with this new concept of digital embodiment, which is going to be standard in our video conferencing tools such as Microsoft's Teams, which was just launched, is that we can use avatars. Now, what we have found in our studies at Lindenwood University and elsewhere internationally, such as at Laval University and at Nottingham University in the UK, is that these digital avatars, which you can show yourself however you would like, afford the ability to have a safe space during these types of interactions. And what neurotypicals don't usually realize is that those on the spectrum have to do quite a bit of masking, even in video conferences. That is, thinking about not stimming and or any type of repetitive motions that they might use to calm themselves, leg bouncing, repetitive hand gestures, twitching, hair twirling, etc. And so the concentration and the mental effort that it takes to not do those things reduces the ability of individuals to pay attention to what's happening and to effectively engage in a social exchange. Now, through avatars, we found that this masking is not necessary. This type of theatrical performance is taken away because you're wearing virtually this type of mask. So people don't know if you are stimming, if you are making a particular expression, if you're making eye contact even with them, which is, of course, is very difficult for many neurodivergents. It's very stressful to try to maintain eye contact for them. So with that taken away, they can still be present, as you see in these digital avatars, which attempt to approximate one's appearance as closely as possible. Generally, we find that people start off by doing this in professional settings. Students are, of course, another story altogether, as they, in later studies, will start adopting things such as cartoon characters and animals more readily, or robots. But in the professional sphere that we're talking about, you will create an avatar that looks very much like you. And so, but it doesn't have the same record of facial features and doesn't have to record or reveal everything that you are feeling, right? And so you can then focus on what the other person is saying instead of how you appear. And this is a radically important and a game changer for those that are neurodivergent. In addition to using these avatars for digital embodiment to make social interaction more palatable and more amenable to this population, we find that you can also use it for visual stories. That being, we know that unknown circumstances such as new office spaces and or new jobs, or even navigating how to get to the office and where to park and how to move through the building, is incredibly stress inducing for this population. So by giving the ability to walk through and virtually experience what it would be like to walk into an office space, dramatically reduces the anxiety felt when they actually go into the space, right, for the first time, because they have been through it. They know what's coming. And if you know what's coming, that reduces the fear of the unknown. And so it makes workplaces much more comfortable by preempting a lot of these anxieties. And this is true for virtually any business as well. So any cultural heritage institutions, any business should have digital twins of all of their interior spaces to make it more accommodating, because even neurotypicals find it much more convenient and reduces their stress as well if they know what they're going to be doing and the steps to get there. But for a neurodivergent population, it is necessary. Now, in addition to the benefits of digital embodiment and of these virtual walkthroughs, we should also mention that the latest generation of XR technologies, much like Apple Watches that people are familiar with, gather biofeedback and biometric data. So everything from pulse, respiration, heart rate, where you're looking, it can gauge the level of stress that you're under. And so if we leverage this appropriately and purposefully, we can use both digital embodiment with avatars, the ability to go through virtual spaces and walkthroughs, and collect this data to have personalized experiences to lower that stress, to improve the experience for individuals in the workplace that may be neurodivergent. So, in the end, what we're looking at is a new future where hybrid work is not going away. And this is actually good for the neurodivergent population who needs a break from a crowded, loud, bright office space. If they're allowed to work from home but still be physically present in the same virtual space as their coworkers as avatars, this is a new type of intersection of labor and culture that is a reality and will become more and more normalized as time goes on. Now, the challenges presented by neurodiversity and neurodivergent populations, more specifically those with ASD, autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia, are going to face more stress and have higher unemployment. So we can utilize these new XR technologies, right, in order to create very cheaply, affordably, I might add, and without a lot of overhead for HR departments, these experiences that address the needs. But the first thing is, of course, to understand the needs, to do, once again, a needs assessment for an organization to find out where the pain points are and where these interventions can take place. So through digital embodiment, visual familiarity, and biofeedback integration, we have this new future potential to leverage these existing technologies in order to support a population. For more information, we have several studies that are out. You can look for us on ResearchGate, Google Scholar. And to reach out to us directly, feel free to email us and or call me. I'm happy to answer any questions. Enjoy the rest of the conference.